We've covered a very, very broad spectrum of issues, and we've gone into detail on certain specifics. Today has been a very interesting day, the last day of the conference. We started off looking at biosecurity itself and some of the infrastructure, especially the biobanking systems and frameworks. We've looked at standards, both West Africa standards, best practice, ISO compliances for our biobanks. We've looked at biosecurity itself and what that entails in several applications. We've looked at, well, yesterday a lot of people talked about government and how far we have not been able to achieve what we should be achieving, and the issue of funding came in, and Dr. Lamide discussed quite comprehensively on the larger economics, how the economic environment affected what we're doing. In closing this conference and bringing ourselves to plenary 5, we're going to go through the final tail ends of biosecurity and biobanking. We have a number of speakers for these parts, and in summary, I'll just go through them. We have Pasquale de Blasio, and he'll be talking about cold chain storage. We'll also have someone who is, or who has been at the background of all this. He was the Commissioner of Health in Lagos State when Lagos was faced with Ebola, and he played an excellent role. Lagos State is good for one thing, and that is succession planning. So when Dr. Jide Idris, who was a champion of the battle against Ebola in Lagos State, handed over to Professor Akiabayomi, you can testify that Lagos' succession plan once again proved spot on. So we're expecting Dr. Jide Idris here. He's going to talk about designing and integrating biosecurity approach and how they've used that to address Lagos State health challenges. A very important person we're going to have here today is someone who's been in charge of the environment in Lagos State. She's a personal friend, somebody I refer to as a colleague in the development space. She's Dr. Dolapo Fashawe. She's the General Manager of Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency. As we have said, One Health involves the health of the environment, the health of man, and the health of animals. Of course, we've taken Dr. Bamidele's paper, Mutiu Bamidele's paper, well ahead of time. So we have these 3 presentations. One of them will be by virtual. Please help me find out if Dr. Pasquale is there. We've been waiting for us. We are well ahead of time, but he's there. So, before he gets on, I would like to read a few things about him so you can familiarize yourself with him. Engineer Pasquale de Blazo is the Executive Vice President of ISENET Biobank. He's also the founder, president of ESBB, which is European, Middle Eastern and African Society for Biopreservation and Biobanking. He's also the founder of Integrated Systems Engineering, leader in tissue microarray platforms. Pasquale graduated in electronic engineering from Villanova University, Pennsylvania, USA. Acquired his master's in engineering management from the Drexel University, Pennsylvania as well, and a master's in business administration from the Bocconi University, Milano, Italy. He has been involved since 2000 in biobanking and organized the first international ISBER annual meeting in Italy in 2004, the year which he established in Milan the first Italian private biobanking user provider facility in collaboration with Cornell Institute for Medical Research USA. Pasquale also developed the first robotized freezers, LN2 Vapor 1500C, we call it the smart freezer, in addition to other instruments that are used in biobanking. This is a gentleman that has deployed his engineering skills and training to provide support to the issue at stake, biobanking. And this is where we have the multidisciplinary, multi-professional approach to this issue. So I would like us to give a round of applause to Pasquale. He's online. Pasquale, we hear you, we see you. Well, we see you, we want to hear your voice. A round of applause for him, please. And I do sincerely apologize that we're starting a bit late, but I thank you for staying. Thank you very much.
No problem. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Okay, and about this, I don't see the slides.
Can you get his slides?
Do you put the slides or I
Yes,
share my screen?
Would you want him to share his screen? Please, Pasquale, could you please share your screen?
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, can you see my slides? Okay. Okay, so good afternoon. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizer for this wonderful meeting. I really enjoyed the presentation of the first 2 days, and also this morning, of course. And I'm very sorry that I was not able to come because of the COVID situation and the restriction that we still have to come to African countries from Europe. But I hope next time I will be able to come because, as you know, I am involved in GET since the beginning. And I really follow. And I really congratulate all the organization of GET, Dotun in premise, of the progress that GET has made in the last few years. So really, congratulations. So listening to the presentation, I added this slide a few minutes ago, because I think it is important to remind ourselves the few things that we should do in order to keep COVID away from us. Of course, the first thing is the vaccine. Wash your hands, cover a mask, and avoid crowds. And these are things that I have to say that are working in Italy, but all over the place in the world where there's a possibility to do the vaccine. The vaccine itself doesn't do everything, but with the mask and with the other things, you really can lower down the curve of infections. In fact, if you look at the right side, you can see the efficacy of the vaccines between people that did not have the vaccine and the vaccine. And this slide I put it on because I disagree completely from the last speaker of last night, which he said that the vaccines are placebo. And they are not placebo, I can tell you, because, for example, we had a big anti-vax let's say demonstration about 7 days ago in Trieste, in Italy. And after that, nobody had the masks, nobody had the vaccine, of course, because there were no vaccines. And today, the health authorities saying that the hospitals are full of people with got infected with COVID, which were present at this shows. So this is why I put this on. But my talk is a very short talk, and we'll talk about a specific topic, which is to keep the cold chain. Why this is important? It is important because keeping the cold chain of the vaccine keeps the efficacy of the vaccine. And it seems to be a very simple topic, but it is very, very important. We know that the vaccines are very sensitive to fluctuation in internal condition and could easily lose their viability and efficacy if their storage conditions are not changed. And so we need to keep high attention on this. Now, this is complicated because there are different types of vaccines which are available. mRNA vaccines, which require very low temperature, and viral vector vaccines, which need smaller temperature. But all of them needs to have a variability, a low variability of temperature when we move them around. And because we move the vaccines from US, mainly Europe, to other countries, this is very important to keep the temperature of the cold chain. And it is also important that the staff that manages the vaccine are trained either in freezing operation and maintenance or cold chain supply, especially in talking about distribution and vaccine handling, because you need to keep the temperature, but you need also to deliver the vaccine in a certain time and certain condition. Now, these are all the vaccine, most of the vaccines that are available, and as you can see on the storage of the right column, there are different type of temperatures that you have to keep this vaccine in order to be able to do a good delivery. Now, if we look at this slide where you see the vaccine, the mRNA vaccine and the viral vector vaccine, you see the complexity that you need to take into consideration. The mRNA vaccine starts from the factory in a very sophisticated package with dry ice, fly to the nation where we receive the vaccine, and then are delivered. While the viral vector are a little bit easier to be managed. If we look at this map, I mean, you know very well that this map is the way the vaccines are delivered in the various countries. In most of industrialized countries, we are already deliver a third dose of the vaccine. But if you look at Africa, you know very well, better than me, that the distribution of vaccine is not very good at the moment. I hope that with the G20, which will start in Rome tomorrow, they will decide to deliver billions of vaccines to Africa, and hopefully that with a few months ahead we can cover Africa with the vaccines. But this is an opportunity, of course, but it is also a problem to keep the cold chain, because you need to get prepared. In fact, if you look at the distribution of in Africa where the vaccine were delivered, there is still a big difference. But there is a big difference also on the type of vaccines that Africa acquired. And this we go back to the temperature that you need to keep. So you need different logistics to handle this vaccine. So you need to pay a lot of attention. And we don't know which type of vaccine G20 probably will deliver to Africa. So again, it is fundamental to be prepared to receive and distribute the vaccine in order to be able to keep the cold chain to guarantee the quality of the vaccine delivery. But it is, let's say, standardized now the way the vaccine goes from the factory to the distribution hubs that every country has prepared. The problem is not there. The problem realized in the last mile delivery. So how you deliver this vaccine from distribution hubs to care homes, to clinics, to hospitals, to temporary vaccine centers. And this is the critical area, the critical point to keep the cold chain. And in many places we also use mobile units, which will go in the country, probably very far from the distribution hubs, which you need to supply with the new vaccine when they finish the stock. Now this is a typical freezer farm or a distribution hub that you may have in the big city or near the airports where the vaccine will arrive. And these hubs need to have all freezer storage units that store COVID vaccine must have temperature stabilized to maintain the temperature at the recommended temperature range. So when you buy these freezers, you need to make sure that this freezer has temperature stabilized. Of course, there are two. You need to buy or you need to install, depending on the vaccine that you are going to handle, either vaccines or either freezers that can cool up to -80 degrees centigrade, or for basically for the Pfizer vaccines, or the -20 degrees centigrade for the Moderna and AstraZeneca vaccine. The temperature of the freezer units needs to be checked and recorded in temperature log. This is not obvious. Usually, or if you do not have trained people, you don't do this. But this is very important because you need to control that the temperature of the freezers are stable. And you need, of course, to do regular inspections, and also from certified external companies, in order to record that your freezers are working properly. You need to have a standard operating procedure for your freezer farm. In fact, when you receive COVID-19 vaccine, you should document the vaccine that you have acquired, and which was the minimum temperature of the vehicle or the vaccine stock that you receive, in the box that you receive. The storage temperature should then be recorded at the beginning and at the end of the business day. Digital data loggers can be used to automatically monitor the temperature and specialized storage. Every time the storage unit success, the temperature will be recorded and an alarm raises in case there are any major fluctuation. Because as you know, when you open a vertical freezer, the temperature of the freezer goes up, and if it goes up too much, you need to intervene. And all this in the distribution hub, you should have a monitoring and alarm system, because when people are not there, you need to have somebody or someone that intervenes if an alarm occurs. You should have people on call in order that can intervene. And this is also to keep the safety of the vaccine. Now, this is a meeting which we talk about biobank a lot, and biobanks have an important role in maintaining the integrity of the COVID vaccine. Biobank, because biobank have experience in handling ultra-low temperature freezer and maintaining cold chains, and can play a crucial role in supporting COVID-19 vaccine distribution program across the globe. Biobank staff have the responsibility of assuring high standards of biospecimen quality and are trained on the correct protocol of handling vaccine. Furthermore, biobanks can play an important role in training new users in handling vaccine supply chain and educating them to follow best practice for the storage and transportation of vaccine. Biobank can leverage an integrated software that can unify all clinical and biological information associated with COVID-19 vaccine. A fully integrated biobank LIMS that includes a freezer inventory management software solution can serve as a repository of all information. In fact, the biobank LIMS usually keeps clinical data of the donor, of the person that gets vaccinated. We have the LIMS database, so with all the information about where the vaccine was stored, the temperature, and so on, and the registry to keep all this information. If we go back to this slide, we focus a little bit more on the transportation of the vaccine from the distribution hub to the various hubs, smaller hubs, where the vaccine are distributed. And again, each country has a different logistic and different territory, physical territory, which needs to be prepared to organize this transport in order to keep integrity of the vaccine. So also the vaccine transportation cold chain needs to follow some rules. I have here the FDA rules, which oblige the logistic and the personnel to control the temperature of the vaccine during the transportation. You have to have a data logger to monitor storage temperature continuously in the box that you use to transport this vaccine. You need also to have a labeling. This box needs to be labeled very well in order, and need to have vials and withdrawal syringes, and also them should be accurately labeled to prevent mix-up. Suppliers, before the shipping, you need to ensure that you have all requirement supplies labeled in the transportation vehicle with external cooling material, temperature monitor, and so on. And what is also very important is to have, you need to have a contingency plan in place in case of power outage or malfunction of the units and in case of any emergency power supply. Also traffic will be a problem, because when you move vaccine from place A to place B traffic, it would be very important to keep coaching. And you have to have also extra space of in your freezer for the vaccine. And an alarm system needed to be in place in the case of a major temperature fluctuation. So we saw from Akin, which shows the vaccination distribution hub in Lagos, and I congratulate the team for the work that they've done. And in Italy, for example, in a lot of places, we let the military forces to organize the vaccine distribution and management. We also need to have mobile units, because there are remote places in any country which are difficult to reach, and it's usually mobile units can do a capillary vaccination. Of course, also these mobile units need to have a freezer and needs to control the mobile, to control the cold chain, the vaccine that they have in these mobile units. But these mobile units need to be refilled with vaccine. So one of the possibilities for remote places, if you cannot reach them with trucks or other means, you could use drones. I remember that 10 years ago in one of the meetings in South Africa, I proposed to use drones to collect the biomaterial for the biobanks in Africa. But at that time, the drones were not sophisticated as the ones that are available now. And as you can see, in Ghana, for example, they are already using drones for distributing vaccine, but also in other places in the world. And soon, at least in our countries, DHL, Amazon will deliver packages. So, but also here you need to use special packages to put the vaccine inside, and you need to control the temperature of this transport. Okay, so I am almost finished with my presentation, because I told you that I was speaking about one single topic. And so I just want to give you some take-home messages. The safeguard, the viability, effect, and efficacy of COVID vaccines, and the number of parameters have to be in place. They are of great importance. Is needed. Sorry?
Out is not signing on. Chopin is BI.
Okay. Cold chain management when transporting the vaccine must be prior to adequate measures put in place. Biobank play a vital role in vaccine supply chain. Hello?
Thank you.
Biobank limbs.
Hello, somebody online appears to be interrupting Pasquale's presentation.
What does that mean? How old me? It's
Please look online and mute whoever is speaking. Pasquale, please give us a minute or two before you conclude. Someone online is interfering in your presentation.
Okay, so let's go back. Take home messages. To safeguard the viability and efficacy of COVID-19 vaccine, a number of parameters have to be in place. Of great importance is the need to maintain temperature within the acceptable range. Cold chain management when transporting the vaccine must be prioritized and adequate measures put in place. Should be designed at the end, and Biobank plays a vital role in vaccine supply chain readiness by ensuring effective storage and safe distribution of COVID-19 vaccine. Biobank limbs is needed to track all the variables and manage them to maintain the integrity of the COVID vaccine throughout the entire life cycle. Here you can see basically a summarization of what I said about all the parameters that you need to take into consideration in order to keep the cold chain. And all this, I suggest that this is a document that ISBER, which is the International Society for Biobanks, published lately, where there are all the recommendations for keeping the cold chain for the vaccine. I'd like to thank you for the patient, and I'd like to thank all my friends in the biobanking field that are helping the biobanking world to work in this important field. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pasquale de Blasio, for your very short, crisp, and straight to the point presentation. Thank you also for educating us on the SOPs for preserving and storing vaccines, and also because a lot of people are still skeptical, so it's very important for us to preserve the integrity of these vaccines by adhering to the storage SOPs. Thank you so much. Can we please applaud him once again? Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation, and we apologize for that interruption. As we move on very quickly on this closing ceremony of the 7th Annual One Health and Biosecurity Conference, it's my honor to bring up our next speaker, Dr. Dolapo Fashawe. She is the General Manager, Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency. She'll be speaking to us. Oh wow, okay, I'm enjoying this audience. Please, a round of applause for her. I'm going to read her bio very quickly. Thank you very much. She'll be speaking to us on understanding the impact of environmental degradation on emerging infectious diseases. A quick one about her. Dr. Dolapo Fashawe is a public health practitioner who is passionate about healthcare in developing countries. She has played a pivotal role in engaging state governments and non-governmental organizations toward improved healthcare service delivery, innovations, and initiatives across Nigeria. She received her MBBS degree at Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, holds a master's degree in public health from the Lagos State University College of Medicine in 2008, and a diploma in international health consultancy from the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine 2011. Dr. Fashawe is currently the General Manager of the Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency, LASEPA. She is the Pioneer Desk Officer for Mental Health Programs and facilitates necessary policy initiatives as well as development of a needed new mental health bill for the Lagos State government, which was passed into law in January 2019. Furthermore, she facilitated the Lagos State Livable City Conference in November 2013 to design a clearer understanding of the emerging issues that come along with the mega cities such as Lagos State. Dr. Fashawe, with more than 17 years experience in pioneering new models of providing sustainable, efficient, and effective health impacting programs, she has ensured that gaps seen in the various demographics enjoy access to primary health services and specialty programs aimed at the overall improvement in the health status of communities. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me as I welcome Dr. Fashawe for her presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Very senior colleagues, friends, and associates. I have been introduced as a doctor, but today I stand here as a budding environmentalist. I'm very passionate about the environment, and in the course of studying the environment, I realized that there's no good health without good environment. It's just impossible. And the correlation between health and environment is directly proportional. I will make this I'll just talk through the presentation. It's nothing hard. I believe most of us here understand medicine, so I'm going to focus more on the environment. Now, the impact of emerging infectious diseases and how it affects environmental degradation. What exactly is environmental degradation? Degradation is like spoiling. When we start to affect the environment with our activities, what we do, it could be anthropogenic, meaning man-made. Next slide, please. Anthropogenic, man-made activities, deforestation, urbanization, excessive agriculture, industrialization, and we also have things that happen naturally, like earthquakes, volcanoes, floods can be both anthropogenic and natural. All of this leads to environmental disintegration. Then there's deterioration. When we continue to degrade, we start to deteriorate. Degradation at times we can fix. Degradation at times we can remediate, that means repair. But when something starts to deteriorate, that is what we are calling global warming and climate change. All the things we're doing to the environment is leading to global warming and climate change. And how do these things affect us, human beings? How do they affect our health? How does it affect even non-living things? How does it affect animals? From this slide up here, it's just very clear. When we look at human activities, this Lagos, for example, I used to live in Omole Estate, and I remember someone telling me that 60 years ago, it was a forest where people used to hunt for animals, bushmeat. It was closer to expressway. So when we start to expand and move into the natural territory of animals because of urbanization, which is necessary anyway, we start to play with something called zoonotic diseases. I'm trying not to be a doctor, but zoonotic diseases are those diseases that are transmitted from animals to man. Animals are natural carriers, they transmit to man, and it is very easy for man to transmit to woman, to child, to friend, to foe. And that is what happens when we start to encroach on the forest. What about land and water and all our biological resources? I would not like to say Dubai or Atlantic City is something that shouldn't be done, because they would have done an environmental impact assessment. I do hope so, that somebody reviewed the impact of that on the environment. But when we start to claim water, when we start to disturb the fauna and flora of our water systems, then we start to have problems with our food chain. And when we don't eat well, we start to become sick. I'm just trying to stick to environment and what it causes us humans. When we don't protect our environment, the economic losses, the social losses, even I've been asked to talk about communicable diseases, but I would like, since I'm an advocate of mental health, air pollution with noise pollution actually causes psychological problems. It causes mental health issues. That's why I'm wearing this badge that says break the stigma. People can have mental health issues due to factors that are beyond them. Environment. No good environment, no good health. Please come along with me on this Little journey. Now, there are key environmental outcomes. Outcomes mean, key environmental outcomes, like what do we expect to see? What are the things that damage our environment and lead to global warming and climate change? We have unplanned urbanization. I have spoken about that. When we just go, and when you get to Ekpe, somebody decides to put a village by the water, and all the activities of the beach and the music and the vibrations chases all the fishes away. A study was done in one of, I think Ilashe, one of those fancy beaches out there. Because of our human activities, the barracudas are moving further away into the ocean, and they do not survive in the ocean. They are shallow water fishes. This affects the economy of such areas. People that fish to sell, it's a problem. And people that fish to eat, they start to suffer from malnutrition and decreased immunity. And these are all things that make us susceptible to emerging infectious diseases. I won't pay much attention to this because I have said about deforestation, even bushmeat trading. When we go after bushmeat, those things, a lot of them are natural carriers of diseases or of viruses, of pathogens that do not harm them. Especially those ones, bats. I don't know if people eat bats, but I have heard in China they eat bats. And corona has been linked to bats, but I am talking from a Lagos perspective. I doubt if Lagosians eat bats. But some of those other animals we eat have interacted with bats in the forest. So we can't say, oh, I don't eat bats, I don't know bats, but I eat bushmeat, I eat pangolins, and it is okay. All these things have a massive impact on the health index of any developing nation or city. Now, the current picture in Lagos State, I don't have to say. Before I talk about the current picture in Lagos State, let's look at this slide. It just shows everything I've spoken about. When we build dams, canals, and we do irrigation, for the doctors here, the diseases that come with it are clear. Waterborne diseases, malaria, schistosomiasis, river blindness. Let's go all the way to deforestation, ocean warming. When we have elevated precipitation, that is when the temperature of the earth is so high that water starts to evaporate. This water evaporating is carrying with it particulate matter, is carrying with it bacteria, is carrying with it viruses, is carrying with it pathogens that cause infectious diseases, and we breathe it in. That's a direct relationship between fiddling with the water system, in fact with the ecosystem and our health. Now, the current picture in Lagos State. I don't have to explain this. Let's just use corona. Look at this hall. We're all wearing these things. We greet each other in different ways. Economy is bad. As a regulator in LASEPA, I find it hard to the entertainment industry is dead. People have borrowed money to start bars and restaurants, and all of a sudden there's corona. Nobody wants to go out there. WHO recommends an acceptable minimum. There's something called particulate matter. I'm talking about environment now. In the air, when we see the air, it should be transparent, like here. We shouldn't be able to smell or see anything. Let's look at what corona has cost Lagos State. in terms of human beings, in terms of human resource, in terms of mortality and morbidity. I'm sure there is nobody here who doesn't know of someone or has heard of someone that died of corona. That didn't have to be. And it's a bittersweet story for the environment sector. During corona, Lagos as a city had one of the best air indices in the world. We were #1, better than UK, better than New York, London, Frankfurt. And why? There was a complete lockdown. There's something called source apportionment that we do in the environment. Where's air pollution coming from in Lagos? What is our greatest pollutants in Lagos? It's from traffic. In industrial nations, we find out that it's from industries, air travel, and manufacturing. But here in Lagos, it's from traffic. And what do we mean traffic? A car is not supposed to pollute the air. But when cars are standing bumper to bumper for 2 hours, 3 hours, the concentration of carbon monoxide starts to rise. When cars have not been serviced adequately and you are not completely combusting fossil fuel, that's when they say a car is smoking. That smoking is a killer. We continue to breathe it in and this affects our health. Up until corona, it wasn't clear at the beginning of corona, it wasn't clear how the quality of air affected corona. But in no time, scientists and professors found out that the poorer your air quality, the poorer your prognosis. The poorer your environment indices, the poorer your prognosis of surviving corona, and the higher the risk of spreading it. When we have rapid urbanization and people are moving into Lagos, I've heard of places where they say 5 people share a room. Infectious diseases will spread like wildfire in such places. It is still related to our not concentrating on the environment. Lagos has lost a lot. We have lost human resource, we have lost capital, we have lost money, we have lost skills to corona. And for us, I like the lecture we had on the first day. I was very, very happy when the man from the Navy was talking about how from years past, people understood that dirty water is a weapon of war. If dirty water is a weapon of war, and you can put decomposing corpses in water just to poison your enemies, how about ourselves? How about ourselves? Microplastics, macroplastics, all these things, plastic pollution, we keep shouting, stop the use of single-use plastic. All of you are thinking, how does it affect me? That's the environment and global warming and climate change. So I'll tell you very clearly that the microplastics, I'll stand a little bit away from infectious diseases and talk about something very dangerous, cancer, that has no cure. Those micro things, planktons and small things in the water, they swallow it. Small fish eat planktons and plants. Big fish eat the small fish. And we all here eat the big fish. There's something called bioaccumulation. The more we continue to do this, the more microplanktons we have, and then somebody comes down with cancer and they say, oh, he was a vegetarian, he ate well, he only ate fish, he never smoked. How about your exposure to air pollution and infectious diseases? Even corona with air pollution is they are twin killers. If you're exposed to particulate matter less than 2.5 and you have corona, you need to be very careful. And what are the impacts of environmental degradation really? A World Bank study in 2017 told us that air pollution resulted in about 11,200 premature deaths in Lagos State from doing retrospective studies, just air pollution. What am I saying? Let us start to pay attention to the environment. The socioeconomic impacts I don't have to talk about. Just think of Corona and what Corona has done to our economy. Now, this next table just says, the next slide talks about the state of play. We can substantially reduce and possibly eliminate what is going on by being proactive. I also like what was said on the opening day of this conference about how we are preparing for the fourth wave. That is what is called sustainability. That is what makes a city livable. How do you react? How do you face when an infection, a pandemic, let me just call it a pandemic, when a pandemic faces you? I am very happy and I'm pleased to be part of the health family who has done a fantastic job for this nation, not only for Lagos, in curbing the spread of corona. And I believe that fourth wave, with this conversion, we will conquer it. I didn't say in Jesus' name, it's from work, hard work. And that takes me to the One Health paradigm. There's no way we can fight all these things I'm talking about if we don't have medical professionals, veterinary professionals, environmental scientists, ecologists, geographers, economists, all of them come together and start to think that what are our touch points and what are our pain points. And I'm very happy that the Ministry of Health has come up with this One Health project, and environment and agri are very, very active in it. And I don't know if we can see that cycle very well. We see animals, we see human beings, we see hunters, we see doctors, we see dogs, we see even non-living things. That is the idea of the One Health project. We all have to come together to fight this war against emerging infectious diseases. And when we say emerging infectious diseases, it means basically that some diseases that have been there in the past, we thought are gone or are latent, just quiet there, and all of a sudden, boom, we are facing an epidemic or a pandemic like corona. If we had all worked together under the One Health paradigm, I believe that the world would have had better outcomes with corona. What have we done in LASEPA towards a better environment? I've said I am here as an environmentalist, not as a doctor. We collaborated with World Bank, and World Bank was able to give us 6 air quality monitoring machines. And the findings of these machines cannot even be published and cannot be said publicly until we have a plan to mitigate the effects of air pollution in Lagos. But we have started advocacy, and we are starting to change people's attitudes. We're sharing knowledge here. I am telling all of you that global warming and climate change is not a futuristic thing. It It affects our children, it affects us, it affects you and I. Cholera, for example, is directly proportional to how we treat the environment and the aquifer and the water system around us. If our water is pristine and clean and our food, cholera will be eradicated. That's a fact. But how do we get our water to be pristine and clean and potable? That is left not only to the Ministry of Health or Environment. It is a joint effort under the One Health paradigm. We have also started talking about using eco-friendly fuel. One of our buses we converted to gas from burning petrol and diesel. Let's see what happens with gas. But we cannot put out a policy that everybody starts to use gas when gas is not widely available and widely affordable. It is the government's duty to make sure that before we put out any regulation and enforce it, what we are asking you to do is there, affordable, probably even subsidized. Kenya was able to ban single-use plastics, and it took them 6 years because all the manufacturers of single-use plastics were not thrown out of work. The government started giving them machines and technology to make biodegradable plastic bags. The government spent a lot of money, there was political will, the health impact of micro and macro plastics was spread all over the place, like how health did during the advent of HIV/AIDS, scare tactics, and it worked. And I believe we need to start to do that in Lagos. If people knew the amount of damage these bottles do when they land in our drains, the amount of floods it costs, the amount of children that are swept away because of blocked canals, we will start to know how to manage plastics better. So in LASEPA, we are hot on advocacy, we are hot on information, education, and not just a one-way talk, we are also very hot on communicating. And you know, we have used the strategy of saving the environment to say that save the environment, live a better life. Save the environment, live a better quality of life. Because we realize that human beings really, in the end, what concerns us is we are born, we want to eat, we want to make money, and we pray not to die till we're old. We just ignore the space that we met here. A famous actor whom I like very much, well, I like the movie he was in, Titanic, Leonardo DiCaprio, said, our generation, those of us here, are the first generation, is the first generation to pay attention to global warming and climate change. And if we do not aggressively spread this message to the next generation and within ourselves, we will be the last. And that is doomsday. That takes me to this. Sorry. I want my last slide, please. Yeah, this game. It's a very dangerous game. I don't know if any one of you have heard of, I've forgotten, what's the name of this game? Where you try and remove Jenga. So it's played like this. You try and remove building blocks and make sure the whole thing doesn't collapse. You remove one, I remove one. You remove one, I remove one. Let us look at this slide very carefully. The bottom part in the Jenga game is the most crucial part. If we remove things in the bottom, the whole plank would collapse like a pack of cards. And what do we have at the top of the board? Human beings. What do we have at the bottom? Please, can anybody see?
mushrooms, mammals, fish, reptiles,
insects. In fact, let me tell you something very funny. I hate flies, and I used to wonder before I went into environment, now why did God create flies? They're so irritating. But flies are very, very important in the ecosystem. Very, very important. Because if we do not have flies, that degradation we are talking about and things being biodegradable, it will not happen. Another example is pangolins and soldier ants. Pangolins is widely consumed in Lagos State as bush meats. Pangolins feed on soldier ants. Think about removing all the pangolins from all our bushes. And think about soldier ants entering Alausa and everywhere. And then we say it doesn't affect us. I eat bushmeats. Those environmentalists are saying everything is interconnected. So if we start to remove those small things from this Jenga game, who suffers for it at the top? Who? That is all of us. I close this presentation by saying the One Health paradigm and intersectoral collaboration is the key to tackling emerging infectious diseases. And we pay extra attention to the environment we live in. Thank you very much.
Fantastic. Dr. Fashawe, please don't just run away. I think that, as far as I'm concerned, that presentation was almost evangelical. You know what I mean by evangelical? You know, it's like someone who is passionate about bringing forward the message of salvation. And between you and I, this is a solid message of salvation. The truth of the matter is that we need the environment more than the environment needs us. That's just the truth. If the environment anything negative should happen to the environment, we will be harmed. If anything negative happens to us, the environment will go on. That is just the truth about it. There are a number of things Dr. Fashawe mentioned.
Can I go?
Please don't. I'm going to ask you one question, please, before you go. Because you talked about passing something from one generation to the other. You know, most of us, we grew up in a generation where, like, having cars is exciting, you know, so everybody wants to have a car. But there are younger people now, younger than us, who need to understand what's happening. So, is there any process, for example, for the very young to start teaching them environmental consciousness from the primary school level, please?
Okay, so one of the programs of the Ministry of Environment, I'm happy Mrs. Banere is here, it's called Environmental Bees. We are taking environment, the study of the environment, to basic curriculum. It is difficult to put it in the main curriculum because we have to go through federal government, and so we use it as co-curricular, extracurricular activities, you win, incentives, points, games, and so far, at least we have touched how many percent of schools in Lagos State, Mrs. Banere? So we're very happy to announce that we're teaching our children what global warming means, what climate change means. We, in the environment family, are having a dissemination workshop in about 3 weeks. And I believe using the One Health, most people here will be invited. And you would see the passion that some of these children have once they understand what we're talking about. There's a young girl in America, Michelle Gracia, who is a fighter for green, fighter for the climate. I met a girl from Omole Estate Grammar School. She read her poem with tears in her eyes. Why are we killing Mother Earth? Why are we killing Mother Earth? Let's take that away. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Thank you very much. Yes, you may go now. Fantastic. Sorry, how many people have heard about the butterfly effect before? The butterfly effect. Yes. You want to enlighten us? Yeah? Could you share what the butterfly effect is? Sorry? Yes, sir.
Thank you. The way I understand it is that a small action might lead to a storm. So something as small as a butterfly flapping its wings might lead to a storm. And I think it's a metaphor for that on our daily activities, and what we do might lead to something bigger.
That is it. Little actions that we take can have devastating effects. The butterfly effect was a theory that some people proposed, that it is possible that the flapping of the wings of a butterfly in one part of the world can lead to earthquakes in another part of the world. This is how we must perceive stakeholders in the environment, from the very small ants to bees to flies to certain kind of animals. The ecological chain is sacred, and God, the universe, the creator of everything, methodically put things there. When we remove one, we believe that we are playing dominance. In those days, when people drew the food chain, they put man on top and then animals below. That is the most misleading diagram of any food chain. The truth of the matter is that we are all interrelated, and I hope we saw the diagram that Dr. Fashawe put up. Now, I believe that the presentations will be passed and be shared. If participants will get the presentations. Pardon? Thank you very much. It's confirmed that participants will. Now we are moving to the end of this. I just got word from Dr. Jide Idris. He will not be able to come to present his presentation. He has sent his presentation earlier on and was hoping to be here. But apparently he's snowed under with some things that came up beyond his control, and he has sent and asked me to send his apologies first to the Honorable Commissioner, to organizers, and to this distinguished audience. As you know, Dr. Jide Idris used to be the Commissioner for Health in Lagos State, very active still in the health sector as a private consultant. The next presentation we'll be having, which will probably be the last before that, is a film. Is it on screen now? It's actually a presentation. Let me get the details of that so I don't make any mistakes. Yes. This is going to be by Professor Sir Hilary Beckles. Now, this is an African conference, and a number of Africans have argued the issue of reparations. Reparations can mean several things to many people, and reparations can be also very controversial in the sense that you're asking people who have either violated certain rights or have been perceived to have violated certain rights of Africans, or anybody for that matter. after several years and the evidence has come out that there was in fact some kind of violation, such a person should pay costs in arrears. So this is a controversial topic, but I want us to listen to it from the perspective of Professor Beckles. Whichever side we take, we know that we have responsibilities today. Your responsibility today, whether you're African or whether you're not, includes taking responsibility for yesterday and taking responsibility for tomorrow. The most important thing is that we're all in this world together. We have one planet, and we are all interconnected. Saving another soul may be the first way of saving your own soul. If that presentation is out, please, could you start screening? I think Dr. Beckles' bio is here, and I would like to share something about this very distinguished professor, who is also sir. Give me a minute or a few seconds, sorry. Yes, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles is the 8th Vice Chancellor of the University of West Indies. He's a distinguished academic, international thought leader, United Nations Committee official, and global public activist in the field of social justice and minority empowerment. Sir Hilary received his higher education in the United Kingdom. He has lectured extensively in Europe, the Americas, Africa, Asia, and has published over 100 peer-reviewed essays in scholarly journals and over 13 books on subjects ranging from Atlantic and Caribbean history, gender, relations in the Caribbean, sports development, and popular culture. Sir Hilary has had widespread Caribbean and global recognition for his academic achievements and leadership expertise. He has also served as an associate member of the London University Legacies of Slavery Projects and the University of Hull's Wilberforce Institute for Slavery and Emancipation. His other publications include The History of Barbados in 1990, The Brain Train, Tertiary Education, Thinking and Planning in the Caribbean, 2002, and A Nation Imagined, the first West Indies test team, and the 1928 tour. And I think he's talking about cricket, for those who are familiar with the game cricket. Many people know that West Indies is a center for cricket. For his breadth of contributions, Sir Hilary has received numerous awards, including the degrees of Honorary Doctorate of Letters from the Brock University in Canada, University of Glasgow in Scotland, his alma mater, and the University of Hull in England, the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Ghana, and the degree of Honorary Doctorate of Humane Letters from the University of Virgin Islands in recognition of his major contribution to academic research into Atlantic slavery, popular culture, and sport. And when you look at his name and you say Sir, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, I suspect he's also a knight, either of a temporal knight or spiritual knight. Whatever it is, I'll say welcome to Professor Hilary Beckles. Can you give him a round of applause, please?
What a tremendous honor it is to join with you in participation in what is clearly one of the most important dialogues facing us today within the global African world. It is an honor to join with you and to make this contribution. This is a contribution I hope that will add some value to the dialogue, both those aspects that have been persistently Pan-African and those aspects that are now beckoning for a reconciliation and a new vision. We all know the background to our circumstance. This has been the moment of reckoning that has emerged out of a long journey from the crimes of slavery and colonization through to the emergence of African people from the ashes of the Holocaust against our people, and our emergence with resilience and our determination to thrive in this 21st century. Now, it seems to me that there are two great debates at the moment that are in need of reconciliation. It is absolutely critical at this moment that we enter into this dialogue of reconciliation, of unity, and of consciousness forged with a vision of a new future. Let us look at the long tradition of Pan-Africanism as a paradigm to bring cohesion to the vision of African people against the background of slavery, slave trade and colonization, apartheid. The crime that has been committed, that scattered millions of African peoples across the world, the emergence of Western capitalism, the Industrial Revolution, the global imperial vision of Europe that not only enslaved and colonized our people and enchained the African continent, but also dispersed African people as free labor across the world. In the case of the Caribbean, for example, we are speaking about the European nations extracting 300 years of free labor from 20 million Africans that fueled the industrial transformation, fueled the imperial appetite, and gave them effective economic control over 3/4 of humanity. But the seed of that was that enchainment of Africans, that 300 years of free labor, and the economic worth extracted from our people to establish their imperial juggernaut that brought the resources of the world under their effective control. We now are reflecting upon this. We have done the economics, we have looked at the political aspects, we have looked at the cultural and the ideological aspects, and from the very beginning, these African peoples that have been scattered all over the world saw the importance of fighting for their freedom and liberation, and critically, engrossed in a philosophy of justice, freedom, and equality. But to do this, we had to participate in the liberation of Mother Africa. And so philosophers, freedom fighters, and all of the intellectual and military power of the diaspora was galvanized and mobilized for the liberation of Africa, to take Africa out of the imperial clutches of Europe that was determined never to let Africa go, resulting in endemic warfare across the continent, the struggle to free our nation, our people, our continent from this extractive, racist, white supremacy imperialism. We succeeded. The result of 200 years of Pan-Africanism. The enslaved people of the diaspora fought against the Europeans wherever they were from Alaska, Canada, through to the Caribbean, Brazil, wherever our people were enslaved and in chains, we fought against the Europeans. Haiti became the high point of that symbolism, whereby the enslaved people of Haiti defeated the French, defeated the Spanish, and defeated the English to establish the first free black republic in the world. But we in the diaspora did not end there. We then participated through advocacy and ultimately with the Cuban people participated in the war for liberation in Africa. And therefore the diaspora gave all it could, ideas, concepts, attitude, consciousness, and ultimately arms to overthrow the racist regimes in Southern Africa. This has been a heroic journey of Pan-Africanism, a magnificent journey of Pan-Africanism, of Africa and its diaspora, struggling for democracy, struggling to uproot evil from the world, struggling to create a new global humanity. This has been the Black contribution to the re-emergence of humanity with its potential for justice, democracy, equality for all. This has been a history of the most significant political and cultural agency. But at the height of this movement, this Pan-African movement to free the diaspora and to free Africa, we went to Durban under the auspices of the United Nations to participate in the first global discourse on reparatory justice, on healing, forgiveness, and the search for justice. It was not a coincidence that the United Nations has sought to locate Durban in the post-apartheid land of Nelson Mandela to host this conference, with President Mbeki as host and Nelson Mandela as patron. The African diaspora arrived at Durban, determined to join forces with the United Nations to examine the issue of slavery, slave trading, and colonization of African peoples as a crime against humanity, with genocidal consequences and trauma, hurt, and suffering today as its legacy. The diaspora arrived in Africa with a vision, ambition, and hope to join forces with African leadership, African civil society, to create a culture of solidarity between Africa and its diaspora, to create a 21st century version of solidarity. We understood that the 20th century solidarity was in need of refinement, advancement, and greater sophistication. Those of us who arrive in Africa in order to fulfill this ambition, and who had been engaged in prior conversations with African political leadership and civil society, how shocked and disappointed we were to discover that the political leadership of Africa was not prepared to join with the political leadership of the diaspora in the search for justice, reparatory justice, and global healing. We were disappointed that when Europe said, we are not the crimes of slavery and colonization, and neither are we discussing the issue of reparatory justice for the enslaved people and their descendants who continue to experience harm, pain, and suffering. We were surprised that when Europe took that position and threatened to destroy the conference if these issues were on the agenda, that our African political leadership stood with Europe against its own diaspora. How shocked we were to hear the president of Nigeria, the president of Senegal, president of Ghana, and the political leadership of all the other African nations turning their backs on their own black diaspora, breaking the bond that had been built between Africa and the Caribbean for Africa's liberation, and joining with the European imperial powers against the diaspora. This was a process that has generated more trauma in the African diaspora than the African leaders could ever have imagined. There was the narrative that the African leadership had turned its back on the African diaspora as a strategy to appease Western nations, to consolidate Africa as a market for Western imperialism, above and beyond its own commitment to its diaspora as one people. Marcus Garvey, who had dedicated his entire political life to building this unbreakable bond between Africa and its African diaspora, would have turned in his grave to have witnessed what African political leadership did to the diaspora at Durban. It has created a wound. It has inflicted a deep wound on the diaspora. The diaspora, however, continues in its journey to try to understand and to create a new culture of healing in the world. But first, that healing has to be between Africa and its diaspora. Before the world can be healed from the wound of slavery, colonization, and the consequences thereof, before that global wound can be healed to humanity's identity, first there has to be this healing between Africa and its diaspora. We took comfort in Durban 20 years ago that while the African political leadership had turned its back on the diaspora political leadership, that African civil society organizations, the trade union movement, the NGOs, the grassroots, the students, the universities, and many of those civil society organizations had stood their ground in solidarity with the diaspora. So while African citizens stood in solidarity with the diaspora, their own political leaders did not do so. And therefore what we experienced was this division where the diaspora and African citizens stood as one with one voice. They said, yes, there has to be reparatory justice for our brothers and sisters in the diaspora. But while citizens of Africa were making that point perfectly clear, their own leaders were also in disagreement with them on this issue. So we have a foundation on which to build in this healing and this reconciliation. The second force that is very much evident today is that the reparatory justice movement for slavery and colonization, which we said at Durban in 2001, will be the greatest political movement of the 21st century. We, the Caribbean, we said that. Some people thought it was extreme and hyperbolic, but we have lived 20 years later to see the truth of our vision, that the Black reparatory justice movement is going to be the greatest political movement of the 21st century. Everywhere in this world where African people were enchained and enslaved, we are seeing reparatory justice movements emerging. We've seen committees, we've seen commissions of inquiry, we've seen parliamentary groups being formed all over the world to bring this movement to a level of engagement. The Caribbean, through CARICOM, had established in the aftermath of Durban a commission, a Caribbean commission for the study, advocacy, and advancement of reparations. We've seen in Europe, we've seen in North America, Canada, and the United States, reparatory justice movements emerging at their political, parliamentary, and grassroots level. We have seen in Britain the creation of a joint political committee, a joint committee of the leading political parties in Parliament, in the British Parliament, a trans-party committee coming together to work this matter through. We've seen the United Nations acting further. We've seen the European Parliament passing resolutions in support of an approach, a framework for reparatory justice. This is what we have seen. And all of this now requires for Africa to come on board. For Africa's political power, its economic force, that Africa must feel through the African Union, it must feel its sense of time in this moment of history. This is the time for Africa to